Hello and welcome to today's Tiger webinar. I'm Lydia Palmer, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications in RIT's Division of Development and Alumni Relations, and I am your moderator for today's webinar. We are happy to have you join us, and we hope that you and our entire Tiger family are well and weathering this global challenge. We do want you to know that the RIT Office of Alumni Relations is available to help all Tigers in the coming weeks and months with a variety of needs, including new virtual content, learning opportunities, and networking and career assistance in the coming months as our workplaces and our world work through the post-pandemic realities. We especially encourage everyone to please connect to the RIT Alumni Association social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where you will find up-to-date communications and opportunities to connect with other Tiger alumni in your region and your industry. Those links are found in the chat box, and the chat box can be opened by clicking on the chat tab at the right of your webinar window. We are celebrating the class of 2020 this week. Our graduating seniors are finishing their time at RIT, but they're just beginning their journey into the lives of purpose for which their RIT education and experiences have prepared them. As a Tiger for Life, we need your help to welcome our graduates to the alumni body, encouraging them as both professionals and people in their next chapters. If you have words of wisdom, advice, or encouragement for this new band of Tigers, please share your thoughts with them at rit.edu/alumni/tiger-wisdom. We also want to ask you to join us on Friday, May 8th, this Friday, as we celebrate our class of 2020 virtually. We will be streaming a virtual celebration of the class this Friday at 5 p.m. at www.rit.edu/class-of-2020. As you're aware, our soon-to-be fellow alumni won't be able to celebrate the way many of us did with traditional commencement ceremonies, so let's make this virtual event special until they can come back together for something more official. Many in our RIT family have asked how they can help our students and the university during this crisis, and we are incredibly grateful for those offers. We especially want to thank those who supported RIT during yesterday's Global Day of Giving. There is an unprecedented need for financial aid scholarships for current and incoming RIT Tigers. If you are able, please make a gift at the link in the chat box, and we do thank you so much for your support. We want to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the presentation tools. If you are joining from a remote location and are currently signed into your company's VPN, we encourage you to close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of the transmission. The webinar platform is secure and does not require VPN access. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions can be entered in the chat box at any time throughout the discussion. We'll make every effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar. You are joining this event using broadcast audio. If you wish to dial in by phone, dial-in information is provided in the chat box. Live captioning and ASL interpretation are also being provided, and you can find those links in the chat box as well. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available, complete with captions, in approximately 1 week following today's event. All participants will receive an email with the link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box as well, and we will do our best to get you the appropriate answers. Now on to the webinar. We are happy to welcome Mike Johansson and Dave Neumann from RIT's School of Communications to discuss the 5 C's, hidden superpowers that accelerate your career and improve your life. Mike Johansson is Principal Lecturer at the School of Communications and an affiliate of RIT's Magic Center. He spent 20 plus years in various capacities for media companies in New Zealand, Australia, and the United States before joining RIT in 2009. In the business world, Mike won 2 fellowships to the Poynter Institute in St. Petersburg, Florida, for publication design and media ethics studies. And he was one of 12 UC Berkeley Digital Journalism Fellows in 2003. He is also founder of Insider, a free print weekly and website for 20-somethings in Rochester. In addition to teaching, speaking, and writing about social media, public relations, and advertising, he consults and speaks on social media outside of RIT. He was one of 3 instructors In a first for RIT, a 1-semester 9-credit immersion called The Meaning of Things in 3 Objects, a critical thinking course, and he developed 2 edX RITX courses, critical thinking and problem solving, and design thinking, ideation, iteration, and communication. Mike holds an MA in newspaper journalism from Syracuse University and a master's certificate in integrated online marketing from University of San Francisco. Professor Dave Neumann has been a member of the RIT faculty since 1987. He has served as chair of the Department of Communications, a faculty research associate in distance learning, and an advertising education foundation visiting professor at DDB Chicago. Dave has received several awards recognizing excellence in teaching, including RIT's Excellence in Online Teaching and Learning Department Award, RIT's Eisenhart Outstanding Teaching Award, the Sears Roebuck's Teaching Excellence and Campus Leadership Award, and the International Communication Association Outstanding Graduate Student Teacher Award. Professor Neumann holds a BA from Ithaca College and an MA and a PhD from Bowling Green State University. He also holds the distinction of being one of my favorite professors during my master's coursework. So we welcome both of them. Gentlemen, we are so glad to have you here today, and our audience is all yours.
Well, thanks for the great introduction, Lydia. I guess Dave and I will start a little bit just by sort of talking a little bit about, we're both in the School of Communication, which we probably should mention has 3 undergraduate degrees and a graduate degree. We're very proud of our graduates heading out tomorrow night. Friday night, I'm losing track of time here. But what we're really here to talk about today is the 5 C's, which are sort of based on this notion that employers are increasingly looking for people who can critically think, communicate, collaborate, and exploit curiosity and creativity. And starting, I'm losing track now, a year ago, Dave, I think, we came up with the idea of offering the 5 C's as 3 1-credit courses. And students can get a micro-credential, something they can display on their LinkedIn page if they complete all 3 courses. And we just issued the first round of those micro-credentials, so that now people have these neat little badges on their LinkedIn profiles. But anyway, the 5 C's. So why do employers value these things? Well, I guess the reason is that if things change in the world, and it could be you lose your job, it could be the industry you're in changes drastically, could be the world is suddenly in a pandemic lockdown. Whatever it is, if you are well equipped with the 5 C's, you are way more likely to be adaptable and able to deal with such things. Dave, I'll let you jump in.
All right. Thanks, Mike. And thanks for that introduction, Lydia. You did your homework, that's for sure. So yeah, Mike and I have been kind of teaching side by side for quite a few years, and somehow our kind of paths have really veered closely together. I think that we kind of balance each other out in the way we approach the field of communication. Mike is a really pragmatic focus. And I think I veer a little bit more towards the theory side of things. And I think that we both realize that those 2 things really converge with one another. That in order to really understand and capitalize on your strengths as a communicator, not only do you need to have the chops, you need to have the skills, and you need to know how to apply them, but you also need to know how things work under the hood. Communication is a very complex process. And if you just think about the amazing leaps that human technology has made just over the past 110 years, went from the Wright brothers to satellites and space shuttles and space stations in such a short amount of time. How did we do that? Well, we employed everything in the human spirit and the human condition, and that's all based upon the ability to be able to work with one another and communicate with one another, to think critically, to collaborate, to exploit our curiosity, and to problem solve with one another. And so that's kind of where we come from in regard to focusing on communication, because people look at communication as a skill. We hear that all the time, communication skills. But it's more than that, I believe. It's really a whole framework with the way that you approach the world. and the world is changing, and it's changed. I mean, the carpet's been pulled out from underneath all of us 2 months ago, and we're still really trying to figure it out. I will not call it the new normal. I will call it the new abnormal for a long time. And we're all trying to figure these things out. And communication is the key to allow us to adapt to, the kind of the crazy world that we're in right now. It allows us to pivot, allows us to make good decisions. It allows us to deal with anxieties. It's really the lifeblood of who we are in society at this present time, I think.
Yeah, so the 5 C's sort of they spring from what they call soft skills courses that Dave and I developed for the platform edX. That's an RITX free massive online open community, MOOC, that any of you can sign up for if you're interested in this topic, and we'll put up some slides at the end if you're interested. But springing from that, the 5 C's, we sort of got into this idea of going a little deeper on these things. And as Dave says, he's all about the communication collaboration. And I'm going to kick things off in a minute with critical thinking and then get back to curiosity and creativity. We would like to invite you to ask questions as we go along. Lydia, our moderator, will moderate those questions, and probably better that we answer them as we go along rather than leave them until the end. So feel free to jump in with questions. So I guess with that, Dave, maybe we can go to the slides. What do you think?
Oh, okay. So I'm the slide master here. So I'll toggle through the proper screens to get our slides going. Just if you give me 1 second, this should work out with a little bit of luck. You're seeing under the hood how the sausage is made. Okay. Are we in the right place, Mike?
We are indeed.
Okay, just for everybody who's viewing, right now I'm solely viewing the slide, so I can't see Mike, but Mike can see me. So Mike, you can let me know kind of when to go ahead with slides, and I think this is probably a good time. Would that be correct?
It would be. Let's jump right into critical thinking.
All right.
Well, actually, let's look at the 5 C's. There they are again, just so that you can see what they are. And just a reminder about the edX, RITX, we'll have those slides at the end in case you're interested in taking the free course or even getting a certification in one or more of these things. So it's all right, critical thinking. So it's really is a key business skill. A lot of people would assume that critical thinking has always been a key business skill, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. Indeed.com, which is one of those employment websites, published a report last year that said in the 10 years between 2009 and 2019, mentions in job listings of critical thinking as a required skill had doubled. So it's really become something that employers really are looking for. And it and creativity are among the top 5 skills according to the World Economics Forum. And you might be interested to know we're talking about 3 skills today, the 5 C's, that those 2, creativity and critical thinking, are numbers 2 and 5, and the other 3 are in the second 5. They're all in the top 10. So you really can't go wrong sort of boning up on understanding the 5 C's. Meta thinking and metacognition are sort of ways to sort of get at this, and really what we mean by that is simply thinking about thinking or understanding what we understand, that kind of thing. And this is something that we do, some of us, all the time in the moment. Sometimes we think about our thinking later, but it's very hard to get better at critical thinking unless you're examining your own thinking processes. It's important to understand that critical thinking is a kind of thinking that is a narrow, convergent kind of thinking. The idea is you bring things to the table and you combine them to come up with solutions, ideally. It's the opposite of divergent thinking, which we'll get to later with curiosity and creativity, but convergent thinking. And it really does face a bunch of barriers. And there's lots of reasons that we don't critically think. And you'll see a list there on the screen. Everything, ego, groupthink, assumptions, wishful thinking, relativism, confirmation bias, poor communication. And you'll notice, because communication is in there, that in these 5 skills, they all sort of overlap in some ways. And that's going to be something that we will sort of get into in a little bit. Of these barriers, probably the one you're most familiar with is confirmation bias. I don't want to go into all of these necessarily, but confirmation bias is simply when we accept things that fit our worldview or our understanding or our own experience, and we tend to not accept ideas that don't fit into those confines. You see this a lot on Facebook. In fact, I had a big Facebook discussion this morning with someone who clearly wasn't open to looking at a particular thing in a new way because it didn't fit their worldview. And, you know, that's what happens.
So Mike, Mike, can I jump for a second?
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
I was actually scrolling through Facebook this morning, and I looked at that debate that you spurred, and I was really shocked and amazed at the kind of the polarization of opinions based upon what you posted.
Yeah.
And obviously, one person was really, really stuck in her ways and challenged to the point where there was really no good discourse that occurred. It was
Right.
an attempt by you, I believe, to kind of go to the middle and say, let's just have an optimistic point of view. And you were met with essentially a stone wall that said, it's my way or the highway. So when things like that happen, how does critical thinking, can critical thinking help to kind of solve that bypass or the impasse?
Well, it can. If you're the person facing the stone wall, the one thing you can do is really try and understand the other person's point of view. I mean, why do they feel so strongly? Why do they feel as though there really is no movement from their particular position?
Mm-hmm.
In business, I worked in business for many years. One of the things that would happen in business meetings is that one or two people would hold fast to very firm ideas, and they'd be poles apart. And the only way that a good leader could actually bring them close together was to actually have them try and understand each other's position to the point where each would have to say out loud what they thought the other person's point of view was. That's sort of one way to critically analyze and understand the other person's point of view and get them to sort of understand that perhaps, just perhaps, there's another way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm. So really, you're putting as a foundation of critical thinking is having good communication.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what, as I say, these things kind of all overlap in some way or other.
Sure.
Let's hit the next slide, Dave. There we go. So critical thinking, it's how do you feed your critical thinking brain? Well, you'll notice here's some overlap. Curiosity and creativity. They both feed critical thinking. You can't critically think, you can't analyze something unless you have started by being curious and building up a lot of like information points in the brain. If you haven't been able to creatively rearrange these points, so those are things that help feed your critical thinking. Another really healthy thing to develop is an educated and healthy skepticism. This is not pessimism, which some people confuse it with. It's a skepticism. It's, in other words, asking questions. And then last but not least, and definitely not least, is humility. Understanding that none of us know the answer. We're always able to learn something from someone, even those whom we don't agree with or don't see eye to eye with. So someone's cutting in. So to get to good critical thinking, and this really feeds into my background in journalism, for example. All journalists are trained about the 5 W's and the H: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And if you approach any situation and ask these questions, who's saying this? What are they actually saying? Where are they saying it? When? Maybe time is important. And why? I mean, the big ones here are who, what, and why. And then also ask yourself, how are they saying it? Do they mean to get a rise out of you, or are they just saying it because they truly believe this? So,
and Mike, if I can, I want to add in that Mark Colzer said that he thinks there should be a 6th C entirely, which is cynicism. Not negative, but he says it's an all-encompassing inside look at motives, goals, expectations, examining places for failure, weak links in the chains, etc. So I don't know if that fits in with skepticism or not, but he's voting for a 6th C.
I'd let Dave take that one because I might politely disagree. I think cynicism generally has a negative connotation. I think skepticism is a healthier approach. But Dave, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I agree. It comes down to semantics, really, at this point. I think that what probably he means by cynicism is essentially, how we might view skepticism. If you perceive the term, or if you define the term being cynical as having kind of the assumption that something is wrong, then it might lead you down one path. Whereas kind of a more objective stance is probably my personal preference. So I think it's really a matter of language choice, but I have a funny feeling if we were together in the room having this conversation, we would probably come to the same space.
Great. Well, I think we can move on, Dave. Unless you have more questions for me, let's move on to communication and collaboration.
Okay,
which is one of
Mike,
the,
did you want to put up some poll questions related to this? Or
Oh yeah, that's an excellent idea, Dave. Let's go with let's go with poll number 1 and just see what the audience thinks.
And you'll find those poll questions in the poll tab to the right of your chat tab. So you can go ahead and open that up. And which one did you want to look at first?
Well, we have the one I see right now is how valued is critical thinking in your workplace, and I think that would be an interesting thing to hear about.
Yeah, well, question 1 is how valued is it? And the question 2 is all about whether or not training is out there. So maybe you even want to do both of them at this point, or?
Sure.
Yeah. So we're looking at how valued it is. We're getting more than half, about 60% right now, saying that it's a lot, fairly valued, about 15% saying some, 3% saying a little bit, and thankfully no one is saying no, they don't care about critical thinking at all. So far we're good there. And then, have you participated in the critical thinking training? We've got 10% saying yes, roughly, about 25% saying yes, and about 75% saying no.
Wow.
Well, those are interesting results in that as I'm hearing the numbers, because I'm not seeing them, that workplaces are valuing critical thinking in a big way, but they're not really supporting it with critical thinking training necessarily. Is that what you heard, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that spells opportunity.
Right,
if you're in a workplace, maybe just starting with one of the edX soft skills courses that gets into I think there's one module called critical thinking and problem solving. That might be a very good place to start, and take it from there.
Mm-hmm. I think it's probably central to most business cultures these days to really foster critical thinking. I think corporate culture, business culture, organizational culture is a fascinating topic. It's really been only a focus for the past probably about 30 years or so. Before that time, the term corporate culture or organizational culture really didn't exist, and now it's a mainstay. We all have really, I think, in a positive way, integrated the concept of culture into these smaller systems, the systems of organizations. That's really a good thing. Okay, so Mike, you're
handing
this
off
over
to you.
to me now.
Yep.
Okay, so there's the next 2 poll questions I think might be good to put up right now if we could as well, and questions 3 and 4. Lydia.
So the first one I think is, how often does miscommunication occur in your personal life? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, well, one is workplace and one is personal life, so both of them would be great. And we can let people respond to these for a few minutes, and maybe in a little bit we'll come back to hear what people had to say.
Right. So we have we have them up. We have them both up now. One is miscommunication in your personal life, and one is miscommunication in your workplace.
Okay, so we'll give people a little bit of time to respond to those, and maybe I'll talk a bit about communication in general. So, like I said at the outset, I'm more of kind of a theory guy. I'd like to kind of look at the kind of the big picture of how things operate and try to figure them out. So kind of I guess I'm more of an empiricist than anything else. I'm a systems thinker more than anything else. I'd like to see how parts fit with one another. And I think we can look at communication in this way. So I think for people who are listening and watching this right now, it's really good to kind of get inside your own head right now and consider your own communication style and your own communication skill set. So like, what are you good at? And where do you need work? So if we think about a list of communication skills, some of the things that might come to your mind are a list. Are you a good listener, or is that something that maybe you've received a little criticism about here or there? The ability to, clarify or clearly articulate ideas. Are you able to kind of stay on task? Are you a person who seems to be approachable and open to others? How well do you deal with conflict? All of these things are within your communication skill set. And the term that we use in the discipline and out there is communication competence. And I'd like to break this down into a very simple equation. And that is that communication competence equals S plus K plus M. It equals communication skills, like those things that I just mentioned. But you need much more than skills to be able to really utilize the tools that you have. And that's what knowledge is about. So it's really understanding how people operate, understanding a little bit about psychology, a little bit about sociology, about history, about philosophy. It's more kind of a general liberal arts grounding of knowledge of the world. How do different cultures communicate? And I'd imagine that many of you have traveled. And I bet you right now you're really missing those days when you were able to travel and are looking forward to doing it again. And when you travel, you know that you encounter different cultures and different ways of life and different ways of engaging with the world. And that really makes you a broader thinker. So in a sense, it's like critical thinking. So we have your communication skills, your knowledge about how people operate, and then really the big part here is M, motivation. And that is really bringing forward your energy to enact these skills and these and the knowledge that you have. Are you an X or a Y person? Are you inherently like a lazy person who would rather, just do their own thing and not expend much energy? Or are you a Y person who's really kind of out there and trying to kind of engage your own creativity and your own abilities? And so communication competence it's multivariable, multifactorial. There's many things that go into communication competence. And ultimately, it's about adaptability and flexibility. So how adaptable are you to various situations? How flexible are you? And there's lots of ways you could think about this. There was a great concept. It's called rhetorical sensitivity. And basically, it says that people fall along this continuum. And on one side of the continuum is what's called the noble self. And that's basically the my way or the highway type of person. They have a worldview. They're staunch in their worldview. They're not really going to be able to be influenced to change their point of view. And I think Mike this morning in his Facebook discussion had a noble self that he was dealing with. This person had a worldview and really wasn't going to adapt too much to it. So maybe you have somebody in your family who's like that, my way or the highway. And then the other side of the continuum, you have what's called the rhetorical reflector. And this is the person who really has no central core to who they are, but they'll move in any direction in order to essentially fit in. And they're really not all that kind of reliable and trustworthy to give you the truth. They'll basically tell you what they think you want to hear. And perhaps you have that in your life as well. The person who is always saying you're right and always kind of pandering to you. Think about superior subordinate relationships at work. Is there somebody who works for you who you feel is doing that? Or do you do it to your boss? And then in the middle, you have the rhetorically sensitive person. And this is that person who has a central core, a really strong backbone and spine morally and ethically, but will have some flexibility as well. And so communication competence is, the skill set that you have, your understanding of human nature, and your motivation to enact all of this information, and to be a rhetorically sensitive person. So communication is a fairly complex system. A lot goes into it. And I'm under kind of the guiding principle that is, if you can understand a system and you can isolate problems, then you can implement solutions. It's kind of like being a mechanic. If you understand the system of how an automobile works and you can isolate where the problem is, you can implement a solution. You can fix that problem. But if you don't understand the system, you can't isolate the problem.
Dave, I just want to jump in here 1 second because we have 2 comments. One, Christine Papa says, they love the idea of training people on how to perform critical thinking. Most people just criticize rather than thinking in a critical manner. So that's an interesting thought. And then speaking in terms of understanding the system, Sharon Finlayson says, I find communication in the workplace to be a little more, miscommunication in the workplace to be a little more prevalent with our remote working situation, which I think plays right into that. Do you understand the system? Because everybody's system just changed.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're feeling our way around right now. So let me react to that. But first, Lydia, were there some responses to the polls? I'm curious to see before I move on.
Yeah, there were. So the miscommunication in your personal life. Well, actually, for both of them, we had about 60 to 65% of the people say occasionally. So they feel like they experience it once in a while. And then we had some people who must be fantastic communicators, or they have a great workplace environment, that say that it very rarely occurs for them. But more people tending to say either usually or very, very often.
Okay. So it sounds like it's a fairly wide distribution of miscommunication that
Yes,
occurs.
leaning more toward occasionally to sometimes and very often. Yes.
Okay, I got you. Okay, I understand. Of course, that's not
Your
surprising.
webcam may not be working. Your face just disappeared off the little thumbnail. There we go.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. Well, those results aren't surprising at all. And it's really remarkable that we can really communicate very well in the first place because of this idea of this complex system. And so what I'd like to do is quickly lay out a model. It's a visual model that looks at communication. So maybe you can think about an example in your life where miscommunication has occurred, or less than optimal communication is occurring. Or maybe you want to think about the person who wrote about this new medium of communicating remotely and where miscommunication happens. So let me see if I can get this model here open and move through it fairly quickly. So I'll basically talk through this. It's a visual model. It begins with this big rectangle, and the rectangle is just basically is the situation that you are in. So put yourself in that situation. Maybe it's a workplace situation. Maybe there's difficulty communicating through Zoom. Maybe you're having some type of problem with a supplier or a supply chain somewhere. Maybe there's an interpersonal problem with a colleague. Maybe there's just kind of uncertainty in a situation that's leading to anxiety that leads to miscommunication. You can also apply this to your home. Maybe we're all now living in close quarters more often with people than we have in the past. And that's probably leading to its own communication challenges that you're facing. So that's what that rectangle is, the context, because context is everything. As I tell my students, if they ace an exam, I can't like go up and high five them and give them a hug. But if I threw them a football in the end zone, I can go and I can pat them on the butt even. So it's context is everything. And so within this model, we have the sender and the receiver. That's you and me, or you and the other person. And the reason there's sender and receiver is the assumption is that we're always sending and always receiving communication. It's not binary. It's not like sometimes you're sending and sometimes you're receiving. The assumption is here that we're always have the potential of sending and receiving. And the type of communication that we're always sending is nonverbal communication. All those things beyond words. So whether it be, gestures and body language, those are the most obvious forms of nonverbal communication. But nonverbal communication is also the use of time. So how quickly do you respond to somebody's message? You might be the type of person who responds very quickly. You get a text, you send a text. But I'm sure you all have a friend who you send a text and maybe you don't get a text back for a few minutes or a few hours, maybe a few days. And the nonverbal implication can be significant. So nonverbal is everything beyond words. And then, of course, we have verbal communication, and that's either spoken or written language, the words themselves, which have much more kind of definitive meaning than the nonverbals. Verbal cannot be devoid of verbal cannot be devoid of nonverbal communication. There's always an element. Even if you're using the default text to write a document, I would consider that nonverbal because, well, you didn't really take any time to make the document look fancy. Think about the last time you received a handwritten letter in the mail. You've received letters, things that are printed all the time, but when you see your name handwritten in ink, ooh, that catches your attention. So it's really, your name, but it's just the nonverbal element of how it's written. And so the person, one person, they attend to the verbal and nonverbal communication of the other. And so this is the whole idea of how focused in are you? How present are you when you're focusing on one person and the other person is focusing on you? And next we have the idea that we attend to ourselves. We self-monitor. I know you've had this situation where you've been saying something and as the words are coming out of your mouth, you're saying to yourself, no, I shouldn't be saying this. And maybe you try to divert what you're saying to, change the meaning, but it just kind of slips out. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We attend to the verbal and nonverbal. So the question about using, let's say, Zoom or whatever your web conferencing tool is right now. There's some research that's coming out and some really theory that's coming out about how constantly seeing ourselves on screen can be really problematic for some people because it forces us into this self-monitoring situation that we're not used to. We're not used to seeing ourselves all the time when we're speaking. We're used to just speaking and looking at the other person react to us. That's how we're getting kind of the feedback about the efficacy of our communication. But now we're seeing ourselves. So some people are toggling off self-screen view and doing other things. So quickly moving on here, we have on the sides.
Dave, I'm sorry. Can I just interject? Because we do have two comments that I think you may want to address.
Okay.
First one is they were talking about some of the miscommunication issues and the various forms of communication that impact that. Barry is asking whether we're being a contrarian fits into that, and he thinks that we meet many contrarians in business, to which Mark says he thinks contrarians actually have a critical role at work because otherwise you just have a whole bunch of people agreeing and smiling, and that it's part of the critical thinking aspect.
Mm-hmm. I think Barry's talking about the rhetorical reflector, the person who is just nodding along and not being a contrarian. So certainly that kind of mindset and the ability to communicate a contrarian point of view takes a certain type of a person. And I think it also takes a certain type of person to really listen to the contrarian point of view without getting the hair on the back of your neck standing up and getting into the defensive posture. And so there's where critical thinking kind of comes into this. This is where being an adaptable, flexible person comes into it. Really having good, strong communication competence is being able to, A, communicate the contrarian point of view, and B, is to listen to it and to try to really grapple with it and engage in dialogue about it. And well, maybe this rest of the model will kind of help to address that a little bit further, because so here's where we left off, and now we're adding these scrolls on the side. And these are called private cues. And the reason they're on the side of one person and the other is because this is what's known to me about me. This is me and my life story, and that's you and your life story on the other side. But then, and we don't know one another's life story. We don't understand one another's perspective all that much. And the only way we really can communicate is when we have these shared cues, where we come to a place where we begin to understand through all sorts of different, the sharings of information using a common language, having shared experiences. Over time, relationships develop, and these public cues begin to develop even more. And so maybe the whole idea of contrarian ways of communicating are part of the private cues, but until we bring them into that public space and interact about them, they really don't have a good solid grounding in shared meaning. I may have assumptions. There's something called attribution theory. We attribute the motives of other people to the way we see the world. And so if I'm not dealing well with people who are contrarians, who are challenging the system, and here comes somebody along with this point of view, I might attribute their position to being a deficiency in who they are. They have a problem, where that person is not saying, their person is probably communicating that we have a problem. Our workplace has a problem. And so maybe that's where it comes into play. Two last things about this model. We have this idea of time. That's what the triangle means. It's the symbol that we use in our sciences to mean change. So this is always in motion, that relationships develop and grow over time, but there's always problems and there's always noise. And those are the last two parts of this model. There are things that get in the way. There's physical noise in our world that get in the way of good communication happening. And by physical noise, I mean, think about a room that's too hot, or lights that are flickering in the background, or thinking about how now we are supposed to be engaged in collaborative workplace decision-making on a two-dimensional screen remotely. That creates noise. That's physical noise. It also translates into psychological or cognitive noise. Things begin to trouble us. Things begin to confuse us, perhaps. And unless we really engage in good, strong group communication, then we'll have problems. I know it's a complicated model. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we do have one other question, which is, can a person, going back to your noble self, can a person be both a noble self, someone who considers themselves right, and also a reflector that tells you what you want to hear? Interesting.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, and I'd be very frightened of that person. I'm sure there are people who are charlatans who work that way. Yeah, who have a particular point of view, and they're not going to be changed, but they position themselves as being open and accommodating and willing to go your way. That's a really great question and a great observation. And I would, as my knee-jerk or immediate reaction is, yes, there are people like that in the world, and that's troubling to me. That's troubling to me. The study of communication goes back 2,500 years, even more so, the time of ancient Greece and in Rome, and Aristotle was trying to educate citizens on how to be good communicators, because they were ultimately defending themselves in front of a jury. And so they had to have good ethical communication. But then came along the sophists, they called them. And these sophists were people who were training people to use these skills of persuasion, but not towards ethical ends. And that's kind of maybe relates to what your comment is. Okay, so let me just move on. And I just want to talk a little bit about collaboration. And I know that we're running short on time, so I'll kind of make this a little bit quick. And it focuses a whole on the idea of working in groups and teams. It's central to our lives. Think about yourself and how many teams and groups you participate in on a regular basis. Some of these can be, they fit into three categories. We have organic groups, which are our personal natural groups. Our families are our organic groups, or our groups of people who we live with in a community, people who we naturally evolve and congregate with. We have volunteer groups, quite literally, volunteer organizations, religious organizations that we choose to become members of, a softball team, or a knitting circle, or a reading a book club. That's a volunteer group. There's nothing making you stay. And then, of course, we have assigned groups or task groups. And in the workplace, that's where most of these groups are, assigned. So groups are very different depending on how we look at them. But collaboration within groups, well, I'm getting some feedback. Okay. Collaboration within groups is essential for what's called realized productivity. Basically, all that means is that the group solves its problem or comes up with its solution, but you as a member of that group are a better person because of that. You are realized. It's kind of a Abraham Maslow self-actualization idea, that you are a fully realized person when you can engage in group collaborative work and be proud of what the group has done and know that you have done something that was real to contribute to that. Collaboration is necessary for that. And group communication is another complex system. And again, to understand where problems are, if we understand the system, we can isolate problems, we can implement solutions. So again, think about a group that you are in where there's problems and see if you can figure out where the problem is. Maybe this model can help you. It's a factors model. And essentially, and I'm giving this really short focus here, 90 seconds, and then back at you, Mike. We have this model that focuses, this is all about groups and teams. So we begin with this big triangle again, which is time. Groups develop over time. And then the pentagon is the whole idea of a situation or context. So we can look at a situation that your team might be in. Well, 2 months ago, your team was face-to-face meeting in the conference room, maybe going out for happy hour after the week and really continuing on solving your problem. And now you're doing it on screen. And who knows, you're probably having happy hours on screen too. It seems to be a big thing these days. And then we have these different factors. Oh, I'm sorry. We have the idea of communication in the center, verbal, nonverbal, and listening. And we could look at where the problems occur. Are they within the goals of the group? Does a group have clearly defined goals? I know as a teacher, one of the criticisms I will get from students from time to time is that the instructions weren't clear enough. The goal wasn't clear enough. I want a clearer roadmap of how things get things done, which I find troubling because I much prefer creativity as an assignment. But that's one of the things that you may feel. If you don't have a clear goal, you might run into problems. How are you making decisions? Is it a leadership running the decision? Is it a majority rule? How well is the leader operating in the group? Or is it a leaderless group with informal leaders that kind of ebb and flow? Do you have 2 people who want to be, or 3 or 4 people who all want to be leaders? Or worse yet, no one who wants to take control? The norms of the group, those unwritten rules of communication that occur, the roles that you take. Are you a task person or are you a social person? And inevitably, how we deal with conflict. How do we deal with conflict? And finally, the arrows pointing in are the idea of group cohesion, that there needs to be a level of attraction and commitment to the group in order to propel it forward. So I'm sorry I just blew through that very, very quickly. It's a great topic, and who knows, maybe we'll be able to expand upon it more in the future. But I want to kick this back over to Mike and focus into curiosity and creativity, unless, Mike, you want to have a question for me.
No, but if maybe we can pop up a poll. I think there's a couple of poll questions there around curiosity and creativity. If I'm remembering correctly,
Yes, we do. We're just getting those started up. We are asking now, oh my goodness, it just moved. I'm sorry. All right, bear with me. Have you
I'll let you do that in the
participated in any
background, Olivia.
curiosity and creativity training?
Yep.
Um,
And how valued?
yes, and how valuable do you find that? Those are the two that we're looking for, Anna.
So we'll let people jump on those polls, and maybe I'll ask you to give us results in a few minutes, but I'll jump in really quickly. Is it notes here? Curiosity is one of those things that's sought by employers. I think there's a 2016 Oregon State University poll, and it looked at both employers and employees, and they all agreed that curiosity was the #1 predictor of success for people in the workplace. In other words, if you're curious, you're more likely to be creative, and if you have those two things, you are far more likely to succeed. Sorry, but Lydia, did you want to?
Yeah, we have. Have you participated in any curiosity and creativity training? And we've got just under 40% who say they have. So there seems to be a little bit of that burgeoning up in either in workplaces or in people's personal training. How valued are curiosity and creativity in your workplace? We're running just over 40% saying somewhat. And then even between those who say a lot and a little, and just a few people who say none.
Okay, and that sort of gets at the second point there about the curiosity, creativity, innovation gap. Bain & Company in 2017 surveyed 450 business leaders from the equivalent of Fortune 500 companies, but from around the world. And they found that something like 70% of people that they surveyed, and these are CEOs, COOs of company, said that curiosity and creativity were highly valued, that innovation was an absolute necessity for their business. But when asked how they valued themselves in terms of being innovators, less than 25% of them actually rated themselves as being actual innovators. So there's a huge gap there between what's a perceived need or a desire for companies to do these things and the fact that they just don't see it happening in the workplace. So, David, you can flip a slide there.
And Mike, while we're changing that slide, Pamela asks, do you get employees to be more curious? Is this something you can encourage and teach people to be, or is this something that they either are or aren't?
Perfect segue for the slide we just have up right now. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that it's like what you want more of in the workplace, you should reward. And so you find a way to reward the people who are consciously and perceptually curious, the ones who ask the good questions, the ones who offer good insights. And the example I like to give when I'm teaching these classes is Leonardo da Vinci. He was a guy who did not necessarily know what would be useful to him later in life, but he wrote down everything he discovered. He drew everything he discovered. He kept journal after journal, something like 75 journals back in a time when these things were not cheap. They're available to you online if you search Leonardo da Vinci's journals, and they're just fascinating. He literally built up so much information in his head that he would later be able to reassemble into new stuff. And the story I like to share is Steve Jobs, who quite famously talked about when he was at Reed College in California, he literally got sick and tired of the classes he was supposed to be taking, so he dropped out of those, and he just dropped in on the classes he was interested in, including one about typography. He liked it so much, he actually signed up for a second class in typography and became quite an expert at it, even though computer science was kind of the thing he was steering towards. And he tells the story that if he hadn't dropped in on those typography classes and had such a huge interest, the Apple Mac, the first computer to have beautiful typography, would not have had that typography. And frankly, none of our computers today would have beautiful typography because everyone else just copied the Mac. So it's the whole idea of gathering information, collecting the thing. We call them dots. We can all connect the dots looking backwards. But what we don't really understand, and there's developing science on this, is that our brain does connect dots in a way looking forward. It reconnects information for us. So if you can hit another slide there for us, Dave. So where we're going with this is that curiosity is this sort of divergent thinking. It's like anything is possible kinds of thinking. It's the way we discover new stuff. It's the way we get these little information dots in our brain that we can later turn into other things. And frankly, although we don't know it, our subconscious is trying to connect those dots all the time. And if you want to have a practical example of this, just think about the last time, and this happens to a lot of us. It may not have happened to you, but maybe it has. You're perplexed by a problem all day long. You wake up the next morning and the answer is just there. I mean, it happens. John Cleese of Monty Python fame famously gives a talk about where ideas come from. And he says, frankly, they come to him while he's sleeping. His subconscious brain is reconnecting things and coming up with solutions while he's sleeping. The important thing is to have pad and paper ready in the morning to write down the answer before you lose it. And that's just one of the ways that curiosity can really help you. There's all kinds of science out there about, for example, doing something boring. I really enjoy washing dishes. It sounds like a weird thing to hand wash dishes, but it allows my brain to drift into places it would not otherwise go, and allows that subconscious to keep reassembling ideas. And I'm amazed how many times I'll be washing dishes and an idea will pop into my head. If any of you are interested out there, at some point we can possibly share with you. I have some infographics on how to be curious and how to sort of be creative in the moment. These are all sort of ideas that there are like 10 exercises for each that can sort of keep your brain bubbling along. So the key is your subconscious thing, sleeping on a problem. Let's flip a slide, Dave, because we've got one more slide so we get into there. So you can develop these skills because curiosity, really, that's what leads to creativity. You've got all these bullet points or dots bouncing around your brain. When you have to come up with a creative solution, if you've been working hard on your curiosity and you've been working hard on creative exercises to bring those dots together, you're able to call upon this when you need to. It's sort of like riding a bike. You didn't learn to ride a bike by just jumping on it one day and heading off down the street. You had to sort of learn and practice. It's the same with curiosity and creativity. Another good exercise is to literally try and think about a problem you have that you want to solve, and go for a walk, and let your brain focus on counting the utility poles as you go by, or count your steps between the utility poles. In other words, occupy your active brain with something else so that your subconscious brain can be working on solving the problem. I could really go on about this forever, and I probably shouldn't, but I'm trying to wrap up here. People have to leave by 1 o'clock. I'm barreling through this here. I guess the short answer is that curiosity and creativity, although they seem the two fluffiest of the 5 C's, they're actually the very base of the pyramid of the 5 C's. You can't get to critical thinking and problem solving without creativity and curiosity. You can't get to critical thinking and problem solving without good communication and collaboration. In fact, they all sort of work together. In fact, Dave and I at some point will probably come up with this pentagonal diagram of the 5 C's and all the relations. But anyway, so that's a very quick look at curiosity and creativity. If we could flip up the slides, Dave, get the edX slides up right on time here. If you are interested in learning more about these soft skills courses that edX, RITX offer, the current iteration of these things closed June 30th, but there are 6 self-paced courses. And the first 3 there, business communication, teamwork and collaboration, critical thinking and problem solving, are all basically the things we've been talking about today. And if you flip to another slide, Dave, you'll see that the program is actually being relaunched. The edX and RITX folks have decided that they're going to recluster these things. And so that group called Leadership Essentials is basically the things we've been talking about today. Or if you want to get a professional certificate, you pay a few dollars, take an exam, and you get the professional certificate. And that's going to launch, I believe, July 20th. And they're all self-paced, and so something worth thinking about. And with that, I guess we throw it open to any remaining questions.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. I do know that we have a couple of comments. First of all, we will share with everyone the recording just to make sure everyone is aware. And Mike, if you do send me your exercises and those infographics that you have, we can also include those when we send the recording out. So we're happy to do that for everyone. If anyone does have any other questions, just go ahead and paste them into the chat box, or you can email them to us at ritalum@rit.edu, and we will get those over to our two presenters. But we're getting a lot of great information. Thank you. Sam is asking if you would recommend doing both the current course and the courses that are being relaunched, or are they kind of duplicative?
I think they're being repackaged. I think they're exactly the same courses. They're just now being organized as two separate certificates versus one big overall certificate.
Okay, super. Well, thank you so much. And we do want to thank Mike and Dave for joining us today and for your wonderful presentation. Thank you, everyone who was in our audience as well. Please visit rit.edu/alumni/tigers-staying-home for a listing of our upcoming virtual events. We have several webinars in the coming weeks, and we certainly want to include you in as many as possible. Any last questions? I think everyone is just telling you what a fantastic presentation it is. Mark says, I have to say I work in an established engineering company at the state level where things are done a certain way because, oh, have we heard this? That's the way we do it. Any ideas on how he can break through that?
Yeah, actually, I would strongly suggest once you sort of feel confident in your critical thinking and communication collaboration skills, maybe inviting people to do some creative brainstorming that involves like some of the exercises I think we discussed at one point in one of our courses. Think about the worst possible solution to a problem. In other words, turn the problem on its head and say, we're doing things this way. Now let's really try and break it. Let's make it the worst possible solution possible. And as you're thinking about that, you can't help but creatively think of better ways to do things. In other words, sort of showing by example, I guess.
Terrific.
I think just a quick reaction to that is that Mark's situation is that he's entrenched in a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies are so resistant to change because there's no personal ownership. There's no one who's going to say, oh, this was my decision. They can always default to, that's the way it's always been done. This is what the policy says. My hands are tied. And so it's a really tough place to be. And so the question is, Mark, and to other people is how much do you really want to advocate? How much, how secure do you feel in your position? And it's kind of a cost benefit analysis of what's the level of the problem versus the effort needed to overcome it. That's a personal decision to make. But there's one thing for sure in regard to that is you need to find advocates. You need to find people who will be there with you and help you to kind of push these changes forward. But it's not easy. It's really difficult when you're dealing with entrenched bureaucracies. But finding an advocate, finding somebody in the hierarchy who's there to stand with you is very important.
Thank you so much. I think that's the best possible advice we could end on. So thank you everyone again for joining us. Please exit the webinar by just closing your Livestorm window. And please do let us know what you thought of the webinar. You will receive a brief survey in email after this, so we hope you will all complete that. Thank you all for joining us. Everyone, please have a great rest of the week, and all please stay healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.